You could have a whole hour of that show a few times.
I think it's possible people would want to watch an hour of Jason Williams highlights before an hour of...
What are you talking about? I would give for that.
Welcome to The Jump. I'm Rachel Nichols, joined by our senior writer over there. I see him, host of the Low Post podcast, Mr. Zach Lowe, and our 2016 NBA champ, four-time NBA Finals appearances, Richard Jefferson. I don't want to sell short your bronze Olympic gold medal.
Please don't.
Dave McMenamin and Clint Capella are also going to join us later. First, though... the jokes. You heard one at the top of the show. They rate themselves, didn't they? After the lights at the arena in New Orleans briefly went out in the middle of last night's Warriors-Pelicans game. Guess Steph Curry shot the lights out, and Steph is so hot these days, turning out the lights is all you can do to stop him. Actually, that last one is probably basically true, which may explain why everyone else was laughing at the absurdity of what happened at the old Smoothie King Center. Steph himself did not seem to be among them. Here's the video, if you haven't seen it. Second half, Warriors up by 6. Steph gets the ball outside the arc, loads up to shoot, and darkness. The good news was the blackout only lasted a few seconds, but you can see Steph shaking his head afterward, and not just initially, but over and over as he paced the floor. You could also see Steve Kerr also clearly unhappy. And look, I get it. Having been in the building more than once when something like that has gone wrong. Yeah, I was in the stands in also New Orleans when the lights went out on the Super Bowl in 2013, and it honestly felt like a visual record scratch. 1 minute you're watching Ray Lewis, Colin Kaepernick, then things start to go black all around you. Everyone starts talking at once, which means the sound of the crowd gets weirdly deafening, and then you see the emergency light switch on, like you're in some bizarre 70,000 person airplane safety demonstration. It was completely unnerving, but it actually wasn't even the most drastic event to interrupt a championship game. For that, you can go back to 1988, Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals. This footage is amazing. Wayne Gretzky and the Oilers, Ray Bourque and the Bruins. The air conditioning at Boston Garden just could not handle the heat outside. The ice started to melt. Guys are skating around in fog, and then the power overloaded, and all the lights crapped out entirely. Also, you could go back to 2007, a regular season Warriors-Sonics game during which the scoreboard actually caught fire and they had to lower the Jumbotron to the middle of the court. Now, I was not at that one, but I was in Minneapolis to cover Giants-Vikings back in 2010. We woke up to news that snow had started leaking through the Metrodome roof. The entire roof collapsed. That's got to be one of the coolest. Absolutely insane, and they did move that game to Detroit. I was also in Las Vegas 2 years ago. Maybe this is me. We were covering Summer League when an earthquake interrupted Zion Williamson's very first game. It was genuinely alarming to see a roughly 75,000-pound scoreboard sway back and forth all over the court. And all of this is to say that, yes, while it might seem silly that an interruption as brief as what happened to Steph last night would affect anything, I can definitely attest it is jarring when something unexpected happens to an environment that we've been trained to feel secure in. And it is particularly jarring to athletes who are so meticulous about their routines. Take a look at the numbers. Here is how Steph was doing before the lights flickered off. 35 points and climbing with more than a quarter to go. And here's what happened after. Steph could only manage 2 whole points on 1 for 11 shooting. Here he was talking about it after the game.
It's a weird situation because we were flowing a little bit. And I guess kind of after that, it's kind of a rough offensive situation, but tough game all the way around.
We should note, Steve Kerr said he didn't think the lighting impacted anything. And indeed, it would be unfair not to give the Pelicans the credit for how the rest of the game unfolded. Remember, these two teams had just played each other the night before. Richard called that game. It had been a pretty easy Golden State victory and a pretty rough night for Lonzo Ball, who afterward texted Zion to tell him, quote, "That one's on me, but don't worry, I will show up tomorrow." And indeed, Lonzo, true to his word, not only did he finish last night tying a career high with 33 points, 12 of those came in the fourth, including this clutch step-back one-footer that proved to be the game's dagger. The win, by the way, brought more jokes that maybe the Pelicans needed to turn the lights off at the arena all the time. I'm not sure that's a real long-term strategy, but hey, for one night, it was enough. Another weird chapter in one of the weirdest NBA seasons ever. Richard, what was your reaction when you saw that last night? And more importantly, how the win kept the Pelicans just a couple games out of that
Anybody that watches
spot.
this show or knows me or knows this knows that I think it's funny, because I think most things are funny. Look, the lights went out for both teams. It does suck. And if you can talk about like being in a rhythm and then all of a sudden that edge getting turned, it's obvious. And sometimes it benefits one person, it benefits another. Look, the Warriors were rolling, and all of a sudden that stopped their momentum. You know, the Pelicans were, after struggling the game before, finally, you know, or they were not obviously, you know, the Warriors were in control, and then all of a sudden they had a little break. The Warriors kind of couldn't get a rhythm, and then the Pelicans were able to kind of recover. So it sucks. These are like, we went through 50 years of sports to find 6 instances that this happens. It's kind of a part of it.
I like the idea that this was a whole cloak and dagger operation, right? The Pelicans lost the night before, clinging to any semblance of play in hopes. The game's a toss-up, and I could just picture a Pelicans official on a walkie-talkie. Now's the time. Do it! And then the lights go out right when Steph shoots. Look, you can't read anything into this. It's obviously sort of a silly thing. And yes, the Warriors ended up losing. And yes, the Pelicans are still alive. Like you said, Rachel, it's just another sort of fun, random moment in a crazy NBA season.
There was one that we missed out, though. There's one that we missed out.
I was going to say, so I did not include the San Antonio air conditioning.
No, not that one. Not that one.
Air conditioning.
No.
Okay, what?
The Cal Ripken. The Cal Ripken one.
Right, to the streak.
To the streak, the Cal Ripken streak. All of a sudden, the lights just go out, and the streak continues. And the Cal Ripken, like, look, there's rumors. You can Google them. That's not what this show is about. But ultimately, these things happen. I've seen crazier things, and I've heard crazier things.
I grew up in Maryland as an Orioles fan, and my little 8-year-old self is very sad with you right now. Richard, do not denigrate our hero.
I'm not. I'm just saying that, like, these things have happened. Lights can go out at the most opportune or inopportune time, depending on who you are.
That Stanley Cup game, I just didn't think a lot of people have seen that footage at this point. It is insane. They were literally continuing to play the game with that much fog on the ice and only stopped after the entire arena shut down. That didn't happen last night. It was interesting, though, not only to see the Pelicans win, but Lonzo Ball thriving again. He led, as I mentioned, 33 points, that tied a career high, 7 threes. He was a hot name at the trade deadline, Zach. He's entering restricted free agency this summer. That means the Pelicans have the chance to match any offer he accepts, but you've got to think he's going to be attractive to other teams, and we've seen teams put poison pills in contracts and things that makes it hard for the home team to match. What do you anticipate happening, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, there's not that many teams with cap room, and not many of those teams need a point guard, but there are a couple, and we know that those teams are New York and Chicago, and I expect them to be interested. I just don't expect them to break the bank for Lonzo Ball. I don't expect them to poison pill the Pelicans to death or anything like that. I think he'll get strong offers, but I also think the offers will be at the level where the Pelicans, if they think he's a good fit, will and should or could at least retain him. The if there is a big one, though. And those teams that are looking at Lonzo Ball, he's had an interesting season, right? At this point, you have to assume the three-point shooting is real. 38%. He's a legit, pretty good three-point shooter. The bubble was a disaster, and he's left that behind. But he's also not really playing point guard anymore. He's sort of playing a hybrid guard. Zion is the closest thing they have to a point guard, and then probably after that, Brandon Ingram. And so you can't look at him and say, well, he can come in and run our offense the way a traditional point guard would. You have to have the right pieces, the right fit for him. So it's very interesting. I think the Pelicans, look, they've clearly gone up and down on Lonzo over the last year. I think they've got to look at him and say, he seems to fit pretty well with point Zion or whatever Zion is becoming. I mean, he's not just a piece you can let walk and assume we'll get equal talent somewhere down the line.
No, I completely agree. And the point that you made about his three-point shooting, that is key. If you're going to have Brandon Ingram handle the ball, if you're going to have Zion Williamson handle the ball, then that means he is going to be off the ball. And that's where that 38% from three, and you've seen his improvement every single year. That's when it becomes key, because he doesn't need to be a ball-dominant guard. But you can't just replace that type of passing, that type of IQ, the effort that he gives on defense. I wouldn't call him a great defender by any means, but I believe he gives effort and he has room for improvement. But I think Lonzo Ball would be a key pickup for pretty much almost any team with the way he plays and his demeanor.
I do. I've said this since the trade deadline, and there was all that action concerning him, even though he didn't end up going anywhere. His fit with Zion feels real, and when you have a guy that talented, the way Zion is, and his sort of raising up in these last 2 seasons hasn't been completely smooth, why are you disrupting one of the things that is making him into the good player that he is? That just hasn't made sense.
Because they're not winning.
Well, yes, that is true. But to that point, by the way, look, Zach, I agree. It's unlikely that some other team is going to poison pill the Pelicans to the degree that they lose him. But they might have to match it higher than they wanted to, and that is going to then affect the rest of their team construction. So I do think it's interesting, and we'll have to just see how it plays out. All right, guys, how will the rest of the show play out? Coming up, James Harden showed all his Twitter followers just how good his image cropping skills are. Does he use Photoshop?